You haven't missed your chance. You've just been in training. Every mistake, every delay was preparing you for the life you're about to build. You're not too late. The mindset shift that reclaims your 30s, 40s, and beyond. If you enjoy these motivational audiobooks, hit like and subscribe. And join the 1% Audiobook Club here on this channel because I know for a fact you're not an average Joe. Also, let me know where you're listening from and the time there in the comments below. It's always cool to see. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. The Myth of the Expiration Date. The invitation sat on my kitchen counter for 3 weeks before I finally threw it away. Class of 2003, 20-year reunion. Come celebrate our achievements and reconnect with old friends. I stared at those words every morning while sipping coffee, feeling that familiar knot tighten in my stomach. Not because I didn't want to see anyone, but because of what the invitation represented. A finish line I hadn't crossed, a deadline I'd apparently missed. At 38, I was supposed to have it all figured out. The career, the house, the family, the clear trajectory everyone else seemed to be following. Instead, I was starting over in ways that felt terrifying and, frankly, embarrassing. Changing careers, ending a marriage that looked perfect on social media, questioning everything I'd been told about what success was supposed to look like at my age. The worst part wasn't the uncertainty. It was that voice in my head, whispering the same cruel message every day. You're too late. Everyone else figured it out in their 20s. You missed your chance. But here's the truth about that voice, and why it's lying to you too. We live our lives according to an invisible timeline no one actually created. Finish school by 22, start your career by 25, get married by 30, have kids by 35, buy a house, climb the ladder, figure it all out before some arbitrary deadline that exists nowhere except in our collective imagination. This timeline isn't in any manual for living. It isn't written in stone or coded into our DNA. It's a social construct passed down through generations of people who were figuring it out as they went, just like we are. Yet, we treat it like gospel. We measure our worth against milestones designed for a world that no longer exists. A world where careers were linear, life followed predictable patterns, and the average lifespan was shorter. I spent my 20s and early 30s frantically checking boxes on this invisible timeline. College? Check. First job? Check. Promotion? Check. Relationship? Check. Each achievement felt hollow because I was pursuing what I thought I was supposed to want, not what I actually wanted. Everyone talks about the quarter-life crisis, that moment in your early 20s when you realize you have no idea what you're doing. But nobody talks about what happens in your 30s or 40s, when you realize you've been doing exactly what you thought you were supposed to do, and it isn't working. This isn't a crisis. It's an awakening. The person who chose your career path at 22 had limited life experience, unclear values, and probably made decisions based on what seemed practical or impressive to others. Why would you expect those choices to still serve the person you've become 15 years later? You're not the same person you were at 22. Your priorities have evolved. Your understanding of what matters has deepened. Your tolerance for living someone else's version of success has diminished. This isn't failure, it's growth. Here's what nobody tells you about starting over in your 30s, 40s, or beyond. You're not starting from zero. You're starting with decades of experience, wisdom, and self-knowledge your younger self couldn't have had. When I finally pursued photography seriously at 38, I wasn't competing with 22-year-olds fresh out of art school. I was leveraging 20 years of business experience, relationship skills, and life perspective that informed every image I captured. My work had depth because I had depth. Every skill, every relationship, every failure and success you've accumulated becomes the foundation for whatever you build next. Experience compounds like interest. Every year, every challenge, every lesson adds to your total. By your 30s or 40s, you have a wealth of wisdom that accelerates your progress in ways impossible when you were younger. I met a woman at a coffee shop who told me she'd always wanted to be a teacher but became an accountant because it was more practical. At 45, she was finally going back to school to get her teaching certificate. Aren't you worried about starting over so late? I asked. She laughed. Late compared to what? I have 30 years left in my career. Would I rather spend them doing something I love or something I settled for? Her question reframed everything. Late compared to what? An arbitrary timeline that assumes everyone figures out their passion at 18 and follows it straight for life? Most people don't know what they want to be when they grow up. Not at 18, not 28, sometimes not even 48. That's not a bug. It's a feature. It means we can grow, evolve, and discover new parts of ourselves at any stage. We've been sold a lie about how careers and lives are supposed to unfold. The myth says it should be linear, each step logically building on the last, each year bringing you closer to a predetermined destination. But life isn't linear. It's iterative. You try, you fail, you learn, you adjust. You discover what you don't want as much as what you do. Skills in one area unexpectedly serve another. Networks in one field open doors in another. My corporate consulting experience didn't vanish when I pivoted to photography. It gave me business acumen most artists lack. It taught me how to manage projects, communicate with clients, and think strategically. Nothing is wasted. Every experience contributes to who you become. Changing direction later in life comes with an enormous advantage: self-knowledge. You know what energizes you, what drains you, and what impact you want to make. At 22, your decisions are based on limited data. At 38, you're making decisions based on decades of research about yourself. This clarity lets you choose intentionally. Avoid paths that misalign with your values. Pursue opportunities that amplify your strengths and serve your deeper purpose. Feeling behind can be your secret weapon. When time feels unlimited, it's easy to procrastinate. But realizing your years are finite creates urgency. It forces you to act intentionally. I accomplished more in the 2 years after my 38th birthday than in the previous 5. Not because I suddenly became more capable, but because I stopped waiting for permission and started acting with intention. One surprising discovery: so many people are pivoting later in life. Teachers becoming therapists at 42, engineers opening bakeries at 50, executives entering medical school at 39, parents launching consulting businesses at 48. We aren't outliers. We aren't failures. We aren't too late. We're part of a movement refusing to be constrained by arbitrary timelines. The invitation to my 20-year reunion eventually found its way to the trash. Not out of shame, but because I realized I was no longer interested in comparing my journey to anyone else's timeline. Your life doesn't have an expiration date. Dreams don't come with deadlines. Potential doesn't diminish. It deepens. The question isn't whether you're too late. The question is, are you ready to stop living by someone else's schedule and start living by your own? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And now? Now is exactly when you are. Chapter 2. The Archaeology of Regret. The storage unit smelled like cardboard and forgotten dreams. I'd been putting off cleaning it out for months, but the monthly bill had become an expensive reminder of all the things I was keeping just in case. As I pulled boxes into the harsh fluorescent light, I realized I wasn't just sorting through old belongings. I was excavating layers of who I used to think I wanted to be. Box 1. Business suits from my corporate days, expensive and barely worn, purchased for a version of success that never felt quite right. Box 2. Art supplies from a painting phase that lasted exactly 6 weeks before real life intervened. Box 3. Books about entrepreneurship, self-help guides, career development manuals, each representing a different moment when I thought I'd figured out the secret to happiness. But it was box 4 that stopped me cold. Inside were journals, notebooks, and scraps of paper covered in ideas, dreams, and plans I'd written down over the years. Reading through them felt like conducting an archaeological dig through my own regrets. Every item in that storage unit represented something I'd almost done, almost become, almost pursued. The guitar I'd almost learned to play. The business plan I'd almost implemented. The graduate school applications I'd almost submitted. I'd been curating a museum of almost, preserving evidence of all the paths I hadn't taken. all the versions of myself I hadn't become. And every monthly storage fee was a reminder that I was paying to keep my regrets alive. But as I sat there surrounded by the artifacts of unlived lives, something shifted. Instead of seeing evidence of failure, I began to see evidence of curiosity. Instead of proof that I'd wasted opportunities, I saw proof that I'd been exploring, experimenting, trying to figure out what mattered to me. The business suits weren't a sign that I'd failed at corporate success. They were evidence that I'd tried it, learned from it, and discovered it wasn't for me. The art supplies weren't proof that I lacked commitment. They were evidence that I'd given myself permission to explore creativity, even if briefly. None of those almost pursuits had been wasted. The 6 weeks of painting had taught me about color and composition that later influenced my photography. The business books had given me frameworks I later used when I started my own venture. The guitar, even barely learned, had given me an appreciation for music that enriched my life in subtle ways. Dreams don't have to be fully realized to have value. Sometimes the attempt is the point. Sometimes the exploration matters more than the destination. Sometimes what looks like failure is actually research. I found a journal entry from 5 years earlier where I'd written, "I feel like I'm always starting things and never finishing them. Maybe I'm just not the kind of person who follows through." Reading it now, I saw it differently. I wasn't someone who didn't follow through. I was someone brave enough to keep experimenting, to keep trying new things, to keep learning about myself through action rather than just theory. One of the heaviest weights we carry is the belief that changing direction means admitting everything we've done before was a mistake. That pursuing new dreams invalidates old ones. That starting over is evidence of wasted years. This is the tyranny of the sunk cost fallacy applied to entire lifetimes. We stay in careers we've outgrown because we've already invested so much. We maintain identities that no longer serve us because we've spent years building them. We cling to goals that no longer inspire us because abandoning them feels like admitting failure. But what if those years weren't wasted? What if they were preparation? What if every job, every relationship, every path we explored was building toward who we're becoming now? I found a business plan I'd written at 31 for a consulting company that never launched. At the time, I saw it as evidence of my inability to execute. Reading it now, I realized it had been essential preparation for the creative business I eventually built. The market research, financial planning, strategic thinking, it had all been training for something I couldn't have imagined at the time. Buried in those journals were recurring stories I'd been telling myself about time and opportunity. I should have started this 10 years ago. Everyone else figured this out in their 20s. It's too late to change careers now. I've missed my window. I'm too old to start over. These weren't facts. They were interpretations. And interpretations can be changed. What if instead of, "I should have started this 10 years ago," the story was, "I'm starting this at exactly the right time, with exactly the right amount of experience and wisdom to do it well"? What if instead of "everyone else figured this out in their 20s," the story was, "I'm part of a generation that gets to reinvent the rules about when and how life changes happen"? What if instead of "it's too late," the story was, "it's exactly the right time"? The heaviest items in that storage unit weren't the books, clothes, or equipment. They were the dreams I'd never given myself permission to pursue, the potential I'd never allowed myself to explore, the versions of myself I'd never let emerge. Regret isn't just about what we've done. It's about what we haven't done. It's the gap between who we are and who we sense we could become. It's the weight of unexpressed potential we carry like invisible baggage. But here's what I learned sitting in that storage unit. Potential doesn't have an expiration date. Creativity doesn't diminish with age. Dreams don't become invalid just because you didn't pursue them when you were younger. The woman who starts medical school at 45 isn't too late. She's exactly on time. The man who writes his first novel at 53 isn't behind schedule. He's writing with the depth and perspective only life can provide. I spent 3 hours in that storage unit, but when I left, I took almost nothing with me. Not because the things weren't valuable, but because I realized I'd been carrying them as evidence of failure when they were actually evidence of exploration. I donated the business suits to an organization helping people re-enter the workforce. Someone else could use them to build the kind of success I'd moved beyond. I gave the art supplies to a community center where they could inspire new creativity. I kept only a few journals, not as reminders of regret, but as evidence of a mind that had always been curious, always searching, always growing. The liberation wasn't in acquiring more things or achieving more goals. It was in releasing the weight of who I thought I should have become and embracing who I was becoming. Regret, I realized, is just unprocessed experience. It's the weight of lessons we haven't yet learned. It's the burden of stories we haven't reframed. When you excavate regrets with curiosity instead of judgment, they aren't evidence of failure. They're evidence of a life fully lived. Proof you've been brave enough to try, wise enough to learn, and honest enough to change course when something wasn't working. Every regret contains wisdom. Every path not taken teaches something about the path you did take. Every deferred dream wasn't lost. It was incubating, waiting for the right time, for the right version of yourself to pursue it. The storage unit is empty now, but I'm not. I'm fuller than I've ever been. Not with possessions, but with possibility. Not with regret, but with recognition. Not with the weight of who I should have been, but with the lightness of who I'm becoming. Your regrets aren't proof that you're too late. They're proof that you're human, that you've been paying attention, that you care about how you spend your life, that you're capable of growth and change. The question isn't whether you have regrets. The question is what you're going to do with them. Will you let them weigh you down, or let them propel you forward? Will you see them as evidence of failure, or as raw material for wisdom? The archaeology of regret isn't about digging up the past. It's about excavating the future buried under layers of should-haves, could-haves, and what-ifs. And that future is still waiting. It's been patient, but it's ready when you are. Chapter 3. The Reinvention Advantage. The job interview had been going smoothly, right up until the moment the question hit, the one I'd been dreading for weeks. I see here that you're 41. Most of our new hires are in their 20s. Why should we take a chance on someone who's starting over so late in their career? My stomach dropped. There it was, the fear I'd been carrying silently. Being seen as too old, too late, too risky. The familiar voice in my head whispered, "See? You missed your window. You should have done this 20 years ago." But instead of apologizing for my age or fumbling through excuses, I leaned forward. A confidence I didn't know I had surfaced. "You're not taking a chance on someone who's starting late," I said. "You're getting someone who's starting smart." And in that instant, everything changed. Not just the interview, but the way I understood reinvention at any age. Here's what I wish I'd known earlier. Starting over in your 30s, 40s, and beyond isn't a disadvantage. It's a superpower. We've been conditioned to believe that fresh starts require blank slates, that reinvention means erasing everything that came before, that changing direction later puts you at a disadvantage because you're competing with people who started earlier. This is not just wrong, it's backwards. When you reinvent yourself in your 30s, 40s, or beyond, you're not starting from zero. You're starting from a foundation of experience, wisdom, and self-knowledge that took decades to build. You're not behind. You're ahead. You're not playing catch-up. You're playing a completely different game. Think about it. The 25-year-old entering their first career is guessing, making decisions based on limited data about who they are. You're choosing, guided by decades of research on yourself, your values, and what truly matters. Every skill you've developed, every relationship you've built, every challenge you've overcome becomes an asset in your reinvention. They don't disappear, they compound. I met a former marketing executive who became a therapist at 43. Her corporate experience didn't vanish. It became her secret weapon. She understood organizational dynamics in ways that helped her clients navigate workplace stress. Her communication skills made her exceptionally effective. Her project management experience structured therapy sessions efficiently. She wasn't competing with fresh graduates. She was offering something they couldn't: the integration of professional experience with therapeutic training. Her clients weren't just getting a therapist. They were getting someone who understood the corporate world from the inside. By the time you reach your 30s and 40s, you've had enough experiences to know what energizes you and what drains you. This clarity is a huge advantage. You recognize which work environments suit you, which colleagues bring out the best in you, and which conflicts aren't worth engaging. You've seen enough industries, management styles, and cultures to make informed choices fast. This isn't just helpful, it accelerates success. You spot opportunities instantly, make decisions with confidence, and avoid costly detours. One of the most overlooked advantages of later life reinvention is the network you've already built. Every job, every project, every relationship becomes a bridge to a new direction. The accountant who becomes a restaurant owner can leverage relationships with suppliers, landlords, and service providers. The teacher who starts a consulting business already has connections throughout the education system. The corporate manager who becomes a freelance writer knows exactly what businesses need. Your existing network doesn't just help you get started, it helps you get started faster and with credibility. There's another hidden benefit: urgency. When you're 25, time feels infinite. You procrastinate. You wait for perfect conditions. At 40, you have less time, but far more motivation. You know every year matters. Every choice counts. This urgency isn't anxiety, it's efficiency. It's the difference between wandering aimlessly and walking with purpose. It's the advantage of knowing that your actions now have weight. Perhaps the greatest advantage of later life reinvention is authenticity. By now, you've spent enough time being who you thought you should be to understand the cost of living someone else's version of success. And authenticity is magnetic. People are drawn to those who genuinely believe in what they're doing, who make intentional choices about how they spend their lives, who radiate the quiet confidence that comes from self-knowledge. Conviction shows in everything you do, making you more compelling, more trustworthy, more effective. Later life reinvention isn't just about changing what you do. It's about integrating who you've been with who you're becoming. That integration creates unique value no younger competitor can match. The lawyer who becomes a mediator brings legal expertise to conflict resolution. The engineer who starts a design business combines technical knowledge with creative vision. The parent who launches an educational venture understands both child development and family dynamics. You're not following a path someone else laid down. You're blazing a trail only you could create. And then there's perspective. With age comes a premium perspective. You've seen cycles, trends, management fads, and crises. You know most upheavals are temporary, most opportunities have trade-offs, and most revolutionary ideas are variations on things you've already seen. Perspective makes you steady, reliable, and less likely to panic. It makes you a stabilizing force in chaos and a trusted advisor for those who lack your experience. Every challenge you've overcome, every setback you've recovered from, has strengthened your confidence muscle. This isn't the naive confidence of youth. It's earned. It tells others you can handle whatever comes your way, inspires trust, and allows you to take calculated risks. When the interviewer asked why they should take a chance on someone starting so late, by the end of our conversation, they understood. They weren't taking a chance at all. They were making a smart investment in someone who brought not just skills, but wisdom, perspective, and the intentionality that only comes from living long enough to know what really matters. I got the job, not despite my age, but because of it. And in that moment, I finally understood that reinvention isn't about starting over. It's about starting better. Your age isn't a liability, it's an asset. Your experience isn't baggage, it's equipment. Your unconventional path isn't a weakness, it's your competitive advantage. The question isn't whether you're too late to reinvent yourself. The question is whether you're ready to see that you're perfectly positioned to create something only someone with your unique combination of experiences could build. And that something is waiting for you to claim it. Chapter 4. The comparison trap that steals your future. The notification glowed on my phone like a tiny spotlight in the dark, catching me off guard and stirring the familiar knot in my chest. Sarah Martinez has updated her profile, promoted to Vice President of Global Strategy at tech startup. Excited for this new chapter. I stared at it. Sarah. Same company, same entry-level position, same age. 12 years ago, we'd been identical ambitions wrapped in different personalities. 12 years later, she was climbing the ladder with precision. I had taken the scenic route, career detours, U-turns, exploratory phases. what my mother called politely gathering life experience. At 40, she was a VP. At 40, I was starting my third career, chasing meaningful work that paid far less than what I'd left behind. In the cold math of comparison, she was winning. I was losing. Or at least, that's what the voice in my head insisted. But then I scrolled, and the highlight reel of everyone else's achievements began to blur. And in that blur, I discovered something that would change everything I thought I knew about success, timing, and comparison. Here's what I learned about the trap that steals your future before you even get a chance to create it. Social media has turned life into a highlight reel. Promotions, vacations, milestones, all polished and edited. We see success, not struggle. We see the house, not the marriage crumbling inside it. The title, not the anxiety that comes with it. Comparing your raw draft to someone else's published work is a losing game. I was judging my journey against Sarah's highlight reel, and in that midnight glow, it felt simple. She had achieved more in the same time. I had achieved less. But life isn't linear. It's not a timeline everyone must follow. Graduate by 22, career by 25, leadership by 35, peak earning by 45. That path assumes everyone starts in the same place, with the same resources, facing the same circumstances. It assumes life is predictable. Life isn't predictable. Life is jazz, improvised, responsive, messy, beautiful. The doctor who starts at 28 and the one who starts at 48, they're both doctors. Timing doesn't diminish the value. If anything, delayed timing adds perspective, maturity, and depth. I started digging deeper into the stories behind LinkedIn profiles, not the promotions or accolades, but the paths. And the truth surprised me. The marketing director climbing quickly admitted she felt trapped. The entrepreneur who sold his company at 35 had never stopped to ask if he enjoyed the work. The lawyer who made partner young was in therapy, trying to reconcile success with satisfaction. Early success can be a trap, just as much as delayed success. Achieved too fast, and pivoting becomes costly. Admitting dissatisfaction becomes harder. Risk-taking feels scarier. Those who took longer, changed directions, and pursued meaning over status often seemed more fulfilled, even if their resumes were less impressive. And my own winding path? Suddenly, it looked different. Every job, every skill, every industry explored was not scatter, but strategy. Corporate finance gave me the lens to understand business models. Nonprofit work taught social impact. Consulting honed my communication. Each step added to a toolkit no one else had. I wasn't behind. I was diversified, assembling capabilities that would make me uniquely effective. Think of the career counselor who'd been in HR, now guiding clients through politics with insight only. Experience can teach. The teacher turned software trainer, translating abstract ideas into practical understanding. The therapist who owned a business, grasping entrepreneurship's stress from the inside. Integration, not erasure, became the key. And then comparison. The more I measured myself against others, the less I built my own path. Comparison doesn't motivate. It paralyzes. Every hour scrolling, wondering, judging, time that could have fueled action and growth was stolen. Comparison is not just joy thief, it's progress thief. Then came the reminder that age is an advantage. I met a woman starting law school at 43 after decades teaching high school. Older? She corrected. I'm more experienced. My classmates study theory. I've been negotiating impossible situations for years. Teenagers, parents, administrators. Her lived experience became leverage, not liability. The accountant turned chef at 50 applied decades of business knowledge to culinary management. The marketing executive turned therapist applied corporate insights to human behavior. Age and experience weren't obstacles. They were strategic assets. And authenticity? Priceless. I realized I'd been living someone else's timeline, chasing markers that weren't mine. What if success was alignment? Work matching values, actions reflecting long-term vision, life resonating with who you truly are? What if the right timeline was your timeline, not the fastest or the most conventional? I started measuring by new metrics. Days I woke energized, contributions that felt meaningful, the frequency of growth, the joy of using my strengths. My delayed career transition was perfect timing. Work was finally an expression of who I'd become, not what I'd thought I should be. And the network effect kicked in. Owning my non-linear path attracted collaboration. Clients sought insights born from diverse experience. Speaking opportunities sought authentic stories, not credentials. Partnerships formed from shared values, complementary strengths, real passion. That Tuesday night, staring at Sarah's promotion, I chose differently. I could spiral into comparison, or I could focus on building my own future. I closed the app. Her success had nothing to do with mine. Her timeline had nothing to do with mine. Her definition of achievement had nothing to do with mine. 6 months later, I got my own notification. Not a title, not a raise. A message from someone whose life changed because of a workshop I designed, built from every seemingly scattered experience I'd accumulated. Your session on career transitions was exactly what I needed. You helped me see my own path differently. I'm finally ready to make the change I've been afraid of for years. Worth more than any promotion, any salary bump, any LinkedIn accolade. Evidence that my non-linear path hadn't been detours. It had been preparation. Preparation for the exact contribution I was meant to make. The comparison trap promises motivation, but delivers paralysis. Your timeline is yours. Your definition of success is yours. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs the original story only you can write. Stop measuring your chapter 4 against someone else's chapter 20. Stop judging your beginning against their middle. Stop comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. Your future isn't stolen by past choices, age, or detours. It's stolen by the time spent wishing for someone else's path. The comparison trap isn't just social media envy. It's the question of whether you'll live your life or someone else's. Choose your life. Choose your timeline. Choose your definition of success. Then build the future only you can create. Chapter 5. The Reinvention Roadmap for the Real World. The career counselor's office smelled like vanilla candles and false hope. "So," she said, flipping through her clipboard with the kind of rehearsed enthusiasm that only comes from years of repeating the same lines. "You want to transition from corporate consulting to education and training. That's quite a change. Have you considered the financial implications? The time investment? The fact that you'll essentially be starting over in a completely new field?" I sat in that beige chair, staring at motivational posters about chasing dreams and reaching for the stars, and realized something important. Even the people whose job was to guide reinvention were trapped in the same limiting assumptions about age, timing, and what's realistic for someone in their 40s. "Starting over assumes I'm throwing away everything I've learned," I said. "What if I'm not starting over? What if I'm starting better?" Her expression of confusion told me all I needed to know about conventional wisdom around midlife career changes, and why so many people get stuck endlessly planning, paralyzed by advice that treats reinvention like a young person's game. Over the next 18 months, I discovered that the real world of career transition is nothing like the neat, linear process outlined in career guides. Here's the roadmap I wish I'd had, designed specifically for people reinventing themselves with decades of experience, responsibilities, and the wisdom to know that dreams without strategy remain dreams. Phase 1. The Archaeology of Assets, months 1 to 3. Before building your future, you have to excavate your past, not to dwell, but to inventory the assets you've accumulated over decades of living and working. Most advice stops at transferable skills, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Your assets include far more than what's on your resume. They include your network, your understanding of how different industries operate, your intuition for what works in organizations, your emotional intelligence honed over years of navigating workplace dynamics, and the perspective of having seen what really matters in life. I spent the first month creating an asset inventory, not just a list of skills, but a full audit of everything I had that could serve my next chapter. Relationship assets. Every person I'd worked with or learned from. Colleagues, mentors, even clients who might offer insights or opportunities. Knowledge assets. Industry understanding that could apply in unexpected ways. My consulting background gave me insight into organizational change relevant to educational program development. Experience assets. Problems solved, challenges overcome. Difficult clients managed. Capabilities I might not even have recognized as valuable. Perspective assets. Wisdom from having seen multiple industries, leadership styles, and organizational cultures, giving me credibility with audiences facing similar challenges. The counselor had focused only on formal qualifications. My inventory revealed decades of informal qualifications that were sometimes even more valuable. Phase 2. The bridge strategy. Months 4 to 9. Most guides advise the dramatic leap. Quit your job, go back to school, start over. That works if you're 25. At 45, with a mortgage, family responsibilities, and financial obligations, the leap is terrifying. The bridge strategy is smarter. 1 foot in your current world, 1 foot in your new direction. It's not compromise, it's strategy. It lets you test, build credibility, and create income streams without being forced back into a career you're trying to escape. My bridge strategy had 3 parallel tracks. Skill development through application. I volunteered to lead training sessions at my current company. Real-world experience in curriculum development, facilitation, adult learning, while still earning my consulting salary. Network building through service. I joined professional education associations, contributing as someone with business experience. This positioned me as a peer, not a supplicant. Revenue diversification. Through experimentation, I offered weekend workshops on business skills for nonprofits. Modest income, but real testing ground for my new path. It took longer than a leap would, but it was less risky and more sustainable. By the time I fully transitioned, I already had clients, credibility, and proven income streams. Phase 3. The credibility campaign. Months 6 to 12. Establishing credibility in a new field without traditional credentials is tough. The credibility campaign fixes that. It's not about faking expertise. It's about showcasing the expertise you do have in ways that matter to your new audience. Content creation. I wrote articles blending business insights with adult learning principles. Specific, practical, and informed by real experience. Speaking opportunities. I volunteered at conferences. Not as an education expert, but as a business professional showing what training actually works. Strategic partnerships. Partnering with established educators. Offering my business insight in exchange for their educational expertise. Mutual value. Growing reputation. Thought leadership. Identifying gaps in adult learning discourse where my hybrid background added unique value. The key. Create a category where your non-traditional background is a strength, not a liability. Phase 4. The integration phase. Months 10 to 18. This phase isn't leaving your old identity behind. It's integrating it. Your past experience becomes the foundation for something new. You create a hybrid role that no one else could imagine. I developed training programs for professionals in transition, combining consulting with adult learning expertise. Traditional educators lacked the business lens. Traditional consultants lacked the learning expertise. My path uniquely equipped me to create something neither could. Integration revealed a truth I hadn't anticipated. My non-linear career wasn't detours. It was preparation for the work only I could build. The real-world realities. Reality number 1. Transitions take longer than guides suggest. Double your timeline. Add 6 months. Credibility and income streams aren't instant. Reality number 2. It costs more than you budget. Memberships, conferences, new wardrobe, tools, opportunity costs. It adds up. Reality number 3. Your network matters more than your resume. Opportunities came from connections, not applications. Reality number 4. Age is an asset. Experience attracts clients. Wisdom trumps youth. Reality number 5. Transitions never truly end. Even after success, you'll keep evolving. The anti-perfection protocol. The biggest obstacle? Perfectionism. At 25, being a beginner is comfortable. At 45, it feels vulnerable. The anti-perfection protocol gives permission to stumble, adjust, and iterate. Early presentations would be awkward, learning curves steep. New identity uncomfortable. That's normal. Mastery comes with practice, feedback, and consistent improvement. Not overnight perfection. The compound return. 18 months later, I presented a workshop to senior executives about managing career transitions. Many in the room were exactly where I had been, successful but yearning for meaning. One participant said, "I've been thinking about leaving my job for years. Everyone tells me I'm crazy. But hearing your story, maybe it's not crazy. Maybe it's just courageous." That moment crystallized everything. Midlife reinvention isn't starting over, it's starting better. It's not discarding experience, it's applying it anew. It's not being younger, it's being wiser. The roadmap isn't just career advice. It's reclaiming your right to grow, evolve, and become the person you were meant to be, regardless of age or past missteps. The transition is messier, longer, and costlier than guides admit, but more rewarding, sustainable, and transformative than most imagine. You're not too late. You're perfectly positioned to create something only you could build. The roadmap is ready. The only question, are you ready to start your journey? Chapter 6, The Psychology of Starting Again. The panic attack hit me in aisle 7 of Target, somewhere between the laundry detergent and the fabric softener. I was standing there with my shopping cart, having what should have been a perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon, when suddenly I couldn't breathe. My heart was racing, my palms were sweating, and an overwhelming wave of doubt crashed over me. The terrifying sense that I'd made a mistake too big to fix. It had been 4 months since I left my corporate job to start my own training and development business. 4 months of telling everyone I was finally doing what I loved, and so excited about this new chapter. 4 months of smiling on the outside while questioning every single decision I'd made on the inside. And the trigger? Something absurdly mundane. I was buying cheap laundry detergent instead of my usual brand because I was now watching every penny, navigating life without a steady paycheck. That small compromise felt catastrophic. Evidence that I'd thrown away security, stability, and sanity. Standing there under harsh fluorescent lights, clutching a cart full of generic products, it hit me. Nobody ever prepares you for the psychological reality of starting again in midlife. All the career advice in the world talks about resumes, networking, and skills, but nothing warns you about the emotional earthquake of dismantling an identity you'd spent decades building. When you change careers in your 20s, you're still figuring out who you are. When you do it in your 40s, you're questioning who you've been. Psychologists call this an identity crisis, but what I felt was more like an earthquake shaking the very foundation of who I thought I was. For 20 years, I had been the consultant. I knew how to introduce myself, pitch my value, position myself in conversations. I had business cards, a LinkedIn profile, a clear elevator pitch, and an instinct for how to act to be taken seriously. Now I was the former consultant trying to become a trainer. Suddenly, I didn't know how to introduce myself. I felt like an imposter at conferences and awkward at meetings. I was floating between identities, and the space between was terrifyingly empty. This isn't weakness, it's the natural response to massive life changes. Your brain has to rewire itself to accept a new sense of self, and that rewiring takes time. One of the strangest challenges was the competence paradox. I was simultaneously overqualified and underqualified. In consulting, I was an expert. I could walk into any room with authority. Now, I was a beginner again, fumbling with jargon, unwritten rules, and mistakes I never would have made before. The tension was constant, confident yet insecure, expert yet ignorant, authoritative yet uncertain. Learning to live in that tension meant accepting that competence isn't all or nothing. You can be an expert in some areas and a novice in others simultaneously, and that's okay. Imposter syndrome followed naturally. Only now, instead of feeling normal, it felt shameful. By 45, people expected you to have it all figured out. I worried constantly that someone would see through me. The former consultant pretending to be an educator. Every workshop and conference felt like a test I might fail. The breakthrough came when I realized imposter syndrome wasn't proof I didn't belong. It was proof I was challenging myself, growing beyond my comfort zone, taking on work that mattered enough to make me nervous. Then there was the grief. Nobody tells you that career reinvention involves grieving what you leave behind. I grieved my old professional identity, the security of expertise, the comfort of predictable expectations. I grieved colleagues, friendships tied to my previous role, the sense of belonging I'd built over decades. I even grieved my own version of success, the corporate achievements that had looked impressive to the outside world but had felt hollow. I had to accept that grief didn't obey logic. It responded to attachment. And I had been attached to a lot more than I realized. Grief comes in stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and eventually, acceptance. Understanding this made it easier to be patient with myself during moments that felt like setbacks. Missing my old career wasn't weakness, it was human. Confidence had to be rebuilt from scratch. I learned to trust my potential more than my past track record. I had to project authority while humbly acknowledging my knowledge gaps. I had to learn that competence and personal worth are not the same. I wasn't my job title, my expertise, or my achievements. I was capable of learning, adapting, and contributing value in multiple contexts. I also realized that the people who supported me in consulting weren't always the people who could support me in transition. Well-meaning friends and family questioned why I'd leave stability behind, unknowingly triggering my own anxieties. I had to find a new support system. Peers navigating career changes, mentors in my new field, coaches who specialized in helping people weather big life shifts. It wasn't replacing old relationships, but expanding my network with people who truly understood my challenges. Eventually, integration happened. I didn't have to choose between being a consultant and being an educator. I could be both. I didn't have to abandon analytical skills to embrace facilitation. I could leverage both. I didn't have to pretend my corporate experience was irrelevant. I could make it a unique advantage. 6 months after the panic attack in Target, I was presenting a workshop on organizational change. During Q&A, someone asked how I developed my perspective on change management. I said, "I've been through it myself. Not just organizationally, but personally. I changed careers in my 40s, and it taught me lessons no business school ever could." The room fell quiet, attentive rather than uncomfortable. My personal journey hadn't made me less credible. It made me more so. Every panic, every identity shift, every sleepless night had deepened my ability to guide others through similar transitions. That panic in Target wasn't evidence I'd made a mistake. It was evidence I was doing something that mattered enough to be scary. It was the beginning of my psychological transformation. Now, when I help clients considering life transitions, I prepare them for the internal reality, the identity earthquake, the competence paradox, the amplified imposter syndrome. I normalize grief. I teach confidence reconstruction. I guide support system recalibration. These challenges aren't proof of failure or age-related limitations. They're signs of courage, humanity, and emotional depth. The complexity of starting again in midlife is exactly what makes it more rewarding. You're not just changing what you do, you're integrating who you were with who you're becoming. That integration creates a professional identity richer, more resilient, and more authentic than anything staying in your original lane could have produced. The panic attack wasn't the end, it was the beginning. And sometimes the moments that scare you the most are the ones that reveal what you're truly capable of. You're not too late. You're perfectly positioned to start again with the self-awareness, wisdom, and emotional intelligence that only experience can teach. The journey isn't easy, but it's yours. And it can finally feel like home.